Marcus Chen stood in the containment field, watching the alien buyers examine him like he was a piece of expensive machinery. The blue-skinned Zephyrian officials spoke in their musical language, occasionally pointing at him or checking their data tablets. He kept his face blank, showing no emotion. After 3 years in the slave markets of Kepler Station, he had learned that displaying fear or anger only lowered his price. "This one is different," said Administrator Vex, speaking in broken English for the benefit of the lone female buyer who stood apart from the others. "Human, yes, but military background, very dangerous if not properly controlled." The young alien woman stepped closer to Marcus's containment field. She was tall and elegant, with pale purple skin that seemed to shimmer under the station's artificial lights. Her large golden eyes studied him with an intelligence that made Marcus uncomfortable. Unlike the other Zephyrians, she wore simple clothes instead of the elaborate robes that marked high status in their society. "What kind of military background?" she asked, her English perfect and unaccented. "Earth Defense Force," Vex replied, consulting his tablet. "Special operations, captured during the Titan Moon incident 2 years ago. Previous owners found him. Difficult to manage." The alien woman, who couldn't have been more than 25 in human years, walked around the containment field slowly. Marcus forced himself to remain still, even though every instinct told him to watch her movements. There was something different about this one. She didn't carry herself like the usual wealthy Zephyrians who bought humans as status symbols or entertainment. "Has he been conditioned?" she asked. "Basic compliance training only," Vex admitted. "Previous owners requested minimal conditioning to preserve his tactical abilities. He follows orders but retains full cognitive function." Marcus bit back a bitter laugh. Tactical abilities, as if 3 years of slavery hadn't dulled every combat skill he once possessed. His muscles had weakened from poor nutrition and limited movement. His reflexes were slower. The sharp edge that had made him one of Earth's elite soldiers was gone, ground away by endless days of menial labor and humiliation. The alien woman stopped directly in front of him. Her golden eyes met his brown ones through the energy barrier that separated them. For a moment, neither looked away. Marcus saw something in her gaze that he hadn't seen from any alien in 3 years. Genuine curiosity about him as a person, not as property. "What's your name?" she asked quietly. Marcus hesitated. Slaves weren't supposed to speak unless directly ordered to answer specific questions, but something about her tone made him respond. "Marcus Chen, First Lieutenant, Earth Defense Force, serial number 7794. He stopped himself. Why was he giving his full military identification? Those credentials meant nothing here, light years from Earth in a galaxy where humans were considered primitive and barely sentient. "Marcus," she repeated, pronouncing it carefully. "I'm Lyra Velter. I'd like to purchase you." Administrator Vex's expression brightened immediately. "Excellent choice, young mistress. This human's price is 60,000 credits due to his military training and—" "I'll pay 80,000, Lyra interrupted. The administrator blinked in surprise. 80,000, but mistress, the asking price." 80,000, she repeated firmly. "And I want the sale completed immediately with full ownership transfer. No rental agreements, no shared custody arrangements." Marcus felt his heart sink. The higher the price, the more his new owner would expect from him. Wealthy aliens who paid premium prices for human slaves usually had specific and often unpleasant plans for their purchases. 20 minutes later, Marcus found himself walking through the corridors of Kepler Station beside his new owner. The control collar around his neck hummed quietly, ready to deliver painful electrical shocks if he strayed too far from Lyra or disobeyed a direct command. His hands were bound with energy shackles that would tighten if he made any sudden movements. "Where are we going?" he asked, then immediately regretted speaking without permission. Lyra glanced at him but didn't seem angry. "To my ship. We're leaving Kepler Station tonight." They walked in silence through the busy commercial district. Marcus kept his eyes down, avoiding the stares of other aliens who looked at him with everything from mild curiosity to open disgust. Humans were common enough on Kepler Station, but most were workers or servants, not slaves being openly transported. Lyra's ship turned out to be a small but expensive-looking courier vessel docked in the private bay section. As they approached the airlock, she turned to face him. "Before we go aboard, I need to explain something," she said. I bought you for a specific reason, Marcus. Not for labor, not for entertainment, not for any of the usual purposes. Marcus looked at her warily. What reason? I need a husband. The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. He stared at her, certain he had misheard. What? A husband, Lyra repeated calmly. By Zephyrian law, I cannot claim my inheritance until I'm married. My family expects me to marry within our species, but there's nothing in the law that specifically requires it. A marriage to any sentient being is technically valid. Marcus felt anger building in his chest. So you bought a human slave to trick your family? No, Lyra said, her golden eyes steady on his face. I bought a human slave to free him. Before Marcus could respond, she reached into her robes and pulled out a small device. She pointed it at his control collar and pressed a button. The collar clicked once and fell to the ground. The energy shackles around his wrists followed a moment later. Marcus stood frozen, hardly believing what had just happened. He was free, actually free. He could run, fight back, or simply walk away. The realization was so overwhelming that for several seconds he couldn't move at all. Why, he finally managed to ask. Lyra picked up the discarded restraints and threw them into a disposal unit. Because slavery is wrong, because humans deserve better than what my people have done to them, and because I need someone I can trust completely. You don't know me, Marcus pointed out. I could be a murderer, a criminal, anything. Your military record was in the sale documentation, Lyra replied. You were decorated for saving civilian lives during the asteroid belt conflict. You volunteered for dangerous missions to protect other soldiers. You've spent 3 years in slavery without breaking or losing your sense of dignity. That tells me everything I need to know about your character. Marcus looked around the docking bay, still not quite believing he was free to do so without permission. What makes you think I'll agree to marry you? Because, Lyra said, walking toward her ship's airlock, I'm going to make you an offer that benefits both of us. You help me claim my inheritance and gain legal standing in Zephyrian society, and I'll help you do something no human has ever done before. Which is? She turned back to him with a slight smile. Prove that humans are not only sentient, but superior to most alien species in ways they've never imagined. Marcus followed her toward the ship, his mind racing. This was either the best opportunity he'd ever been offered, or the most elaborate trap he'd ever walked into. But after 3 years of slavery, even a sophisticated trap was better than the certainty of spending the rest of his life as someone's property. As the airlock sealed behind them, Marcus realized that for the first time since his capture, he was actually curious about what would happen next. That feeling alone was worth whatever risks lay ahead. The ship's interior was clean and functional, with none of the ostentatious decorations Marcus associated with wealthy Zephyrians. Lyra led him to a small but comfortable cabin near the rear of the vessel. This is your room, she said. There's a food synthesizer that can produce human-compatible meals, and the hygiene facilities are adapted for multiple species. Rest tonight. Tomorrow we'll begin preparing for what's ahead. Which is, Marcus asked. Lyra paused in the doorway. Tomorrow, you start learning how to be the most dangerous husband in the galaxy. After she left, Marcus sat on the edge of the bed and tried to process everything that had happened. Free. He was actually free, and apparently married or about to be married to an alien woman who claimed she wanted to prove human superiority to the galaxy. It sounded insane. It probably was insane. But as Marcus lay down on a real bed for the first time in 3 years, he found himself smiling. Insane was definitely better than slavery. Marcus woke to the gentle hum of the ship's engines and the smell of real coffee. For a moment, he thought he was dreaming. In 3 years of slavery, he had never smelled actual coffee, only the synthetic substitutes that barely resembled the real thing. He found Lyra in the ship's small galley, standing over a cooking unit that was producing what looked like a full human breakfast. Eggs, bacon, toast, and a steaming cup of black coffee sat waiting for him on the counter. How did you get real food? Marcus asked, still not quite believing what he was seeing. I've been planning this for months, Lyra replied, not looking up from the cooking unit. I researched everything I could about human dietary needs and preferences. The coffee beans are from a black market dealer who smuggles Earth goods through the outer rim. Marcus picked up the coffee cup and inhaled deeply. The rich, complex aroma brought back memories of early mornings in the EDF barracks, of quiet moments before dangerous missions. He took a sip and closed his eyes, savoring the taste he thought he'd never experience again. "Why?" he asked quietly. "Because if we're going to be married, I want you to be at full strength," Lyra said. "And because humans perform better when they're properly nourished. That's something most aliens don't understand about your species." As Marcus ate the first real meal he'd had in years, Lyra explained her plan. She was the youngest daughter of House Velter, one of the most powerful trading families in the Zephyrian Empire. Her father had built a commercial empire spanning dozens of star systems, but their culture demanded that only married adults could inherit significant wealth or political power. "My older brothers have already married within our social class," Lyra said, "but I refuse to marry someone my father chooses just to gain access to my inheritance. I want to earn my place in our society on my own terms." "And marrying a human slave accomplishes that how?" Marcus asked. "By proving that humans are more capable than any Zephyrian gives them credit for," Lyra replied. "The inheritance laws require me to demonstrate that my marriage serves the interests of our house. I intend to do that by showing the galaxy what a properly supported human can achieve." Over the next several hours, as their ship traveled through hyperspace toward the Zephyrian homeworld, Lyra outlined what she had learned about human capabilities. Her research was thorough and surprising. She knew about human endurance, adaptability, and problem-solving abilities. But more than that, she understood things about human psychology and motivation that even many humans didn't fully grasp. "Your species has something most aliens lack," she explained, showing Marcus data on her tablet. "You call it determination or stubbornness, but it's actually a unique neurological trait. Humans can continue functioning at high levels even when facing impossible odds, something that causes other species to shut down mentally." "The galaxy doesn't see us that way," Marcus pointed out. "Because humans have never been given a real opportunity to demonstrate your abilities," Lyra said. "Every human in known space is either a slave, a refugee, or working in menial positions. No one has ever seen what a human can do with proper resources and support." She activated a holographic display that showed the political structure of the Zephyrian Empire. Dozens of noble houses competed for influence and trade routes, forming and breaking alliances based on demonstrated power and capability. "Here's what we're going to do," Lyra said. "In 2 days, we'll arrive at the homeworld for the succession trials. Every unmarried heir must participate to prove their worthiness to inherit. The trials test everything: intellectual ability, negotiation skills, strategic thinking, and leadership capability. And you want me to help you win these trials?" "Not help me," Lyra corrected. "I want you to compete alongside me as my equal partner. Zephyrian marriage law recognizes both partners as joint heirs when they work together successfully." Marcus studied the holographic display, his military mind automatically analyzing the information. "What kind of challenges are we talking about?" "The trials are different every year, but they always involve real-world problems that test an heir's ability to manage complex situations. Last year's trials included mediating a trade dispute, designing a defense strategy for a frontier colony, and organizing disaster relief for a planet hit by solar storms. And the other competitors will all be Zephyrians with lifelong training for this kind of thing," Marcus said. "Exactly. Which is why they won't expect the strategies and approaches that come naturally to a human mind." Lyra pulled up another display, this one showing human military history. She had compiled data on human conflicts, tactics, and innovations spanning centuries. Her analysis was more comprehensive than most human historians could produce. "Humans fight differently than any other species," she said. "You use asymmetric tactics, unconventional thinking, and you excel at adapting quickly to new situations. More importantly, humans have something that no other species truly understands." "Which is?" "Hope," Lyra said simply. "Other species calculate odds and make rational decisions based on probability. Humans look at impossible situations and figure out how to make them possible anyway." Marcus felt something stirring inside him that he hadn't experienced in years: genuine excitement. The prospect of using his abilities for something meaningful again, of proving that humans were more than just clever animals, was intoxicating. "There's something else," Lyra continued. "If we succeed in the trials, we won't just inherit my family's wealth. We'll gain a seat on the Imperial Trade Council and the right to establish our own commercial operations anywhere in Zephyrian space. Which means we'll be in a position to change how humans are treated throughout the galaxy. We could establish trade routes that benefit Earth colonies. We could create employment opportunities that showcase human capabilities. We could even work to end the slave trade entirely. Marcus set down his coffee cup and looked at Lyra directly. She was young, probably naive about the challenges they would face, but her research was solid and her goals were ambitious in exactly the right way. "What do you get out of this?" he asked. "Really, you could marry any Zephyrian noble and inherit everything without taking these risks." Lyra was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was softer than before. "My grandmother was a xenobiologist who spent her career studying different species throughout the galaxy. She died when I was young, but she left behind research that most of our people ignored." She activated one more holographic display, this one showing comparative studies of different alien species. She believed that diversity made civilizations stronger, not weaker. She thought that isolating ourselves from other species was making us stagnant and complacent. "And you agree with her?" "I think the Zephyrian Empire is dying," Lyra said bluntly. "Not quickly, but slowly. We're so convinced of our superiority that we've stopped innovating, stopped growing, stopped challenging ourselves. We need new ideas, new perspectives, new ways of thinking." Marcus looked at the data displays around them, suddenly understanding the full scope of what Lyra was proposing. This wasn't just about inheritance money or proving human capabilities. This was about changing the fundamental relationship between species in their part of the galaxy. "And you think one human can make that kind of difference?" "I think one human, properly supported and given the right opportunities, can prove that cooperation between species is more powerful than domination," Lyra replied. "I think you can show them that humans aren't just clever animals, but potential partners who bring something valuable to the table." Marcus stood up and walked to the viewport, looking out at the swirling colors of hyperspace. 3 years ago, he had been a soldier fighting to protect human colonies from alien raids. Today, he had the chance to fight for human dignity and freedom on a scale he never could have imagined. "There's one thing I need to know," he said without turning around. "Are you doing this because you actually believe in human potential, or because you think a human husband will be easier to control than a Zephyrian one?" "I'm doing this," Lyra said, "because 3 months ago I watched a human dock worker solve an engineering problem that had stumped my people for weeks. He fixed it in 20 minutes using materials we had thrown away as useless. When I asked him how he knew what to do, he said he just looked at the problem differently than everyone else." She paused. "That's when I realized that my grandmother was right. We need different perspectives, different ways of thinking, and humans think more differently from us than any other species we've encountered." Marcus turned back to face her. "All right, I'm in, but we do this as actual partners, not as owner and property. If we're married, we're equals." "Agreed," Lyra said, extending her hand. "Partners." Marcus shook her hand, feeling the strange texture of her alien skin. "So what's our first step?" "First, we get you back into fighting shape. The trials aren't just intellectual challenges. Some of them require physical capability, and you'll need to be at your best. And second," Lyra smiled, and for the first time Marcus saw something predatory in her expression. "Second, we start planning how to win competitions that were designed to keep aliens like us from succeeding." As their ship continued toward the Zephyrian homeworld, Marcus felt his old confidence beginning to return. He was still outnumbered, outgunned, and facing impossible odds. But for the first time in 3 years, he was fighting for something that mattered. And if there was one thing humans were good at, it was winning fights they had no business winning. The Zephyrian homeworld of Velcaris was everything Marcus had expected from the descriptions he'd heard during his years of captivity. Towering crystal spires reached toward purple skies, while floating platforms connected impossible architectural structures that defied human understanding of physics. The sight was beautiful and intimidating in equal measure. "Nervous?" Lyra asked as their ship descended toward the family estate's private landing pad. "Terrified," Marcus replied honestly, "but that's not necessarily a bad thing." During the 3-day journey, Lyra had used the ship's medical bay to help Marcus regain some of his lost physical condition. Advanced alien healing technology had repaired damage from years of poor nutrition and overwork. His muscles were stronger, his reflexes sharper, and his mind clearer than it had been since his capture. More importantly, they had spent hours studying recordings of previous succession trials. Marcus had analyzed the challenges with his military training, while Lyra provided cultural context about Zephyrian expectations and social dynamics. They had developed strategies that played to human strengths while working within Zephyrian traditions. The ship settled onto the landing pad with barely a whisper of sound. Through the viewport, Marcus could see a group of elegantly dressed Zephyrians waiting to greet them. Their expressions were carefully neutral, but he could sense underlying tension in their body language. "My family," Lyra said quietly. "Remember, they don't know you were ever a slave. As far as they're concerned, you're a human mercenary I hired and then decided to marry." "Will they believe that?" "Probably not, but they can't prove otherwise, and the marriage contract will be legally binding regardless of how we met." Marcus straightened his new clothes, high-quality garments that Lyra had provided to help him look the part of a successful independent human. The outfit was comfortable and practical while maintaining the formal appearance expected in Zephyrian high society. "One more thing," Lyra said as they prepared to leave the ship. "My father is going to test you immediately. He'll want to see what kind of person I've chosen to marry. Don't try to impress him with submission or deference. He respects strength and competence above everything else." The airlock opened, and they stepped onto Zephyrian soil together. The delegation waiting for them was led by a tall, imposing Zephyrian with darker purple skin and the kind of presence that spoke of absolute authority. This had to be Lyra's father, Trade Lord Kelvin Velter. Behind him stood two younger Zephyrians who shared enough facial features with Lyra to be her brothers, along with several other family members and what looked like senior household staff. All of them were staring at Marcus with varying degrees of curiosity and skepticism. "Father," Lyra said formally, approaching the group with confident strides, "may I present my husband, Marcus Chen of Earth?" Trade Lord Kelvin studied Marcus with eyes that missed nothing. The silence stretched just long enough to be uncomfortable before he spoke. "So," he said in perfect English, "you're the human who convinced my daughter to abandon centuries of family tradition." Marcus met his gaze steadily. "I'm the human who recognized that your daughter is remarkable enough to change those traditions for the better." One of Lyra's brothers snorted quietly. "Remarkable enough to marry outside her own species. Remarkable enough to see potential where others see limitations," Marcus replied, without looking away from the Trade Lord. "Your daughter understands something that could reshape how your people interact with the galaxy." "And what might that be?" Trade Lord Kelvin asked. "That diversity creates opportunity, not weakness. That different perspectives lead to innovations that wouldn't occur otherwise. That cooperation between species can be more profitable than domination." The Trade Lord's expression didn't change, but Marcus caught a flicker of interest in his eyes. These were concepts that a successful merchant would understand, even if he didn't agree with them. "We shall see," the Trade Lord said finally. "The succession trials begin tomorrow. If you and my daughter succeed, you'll have the chance to prove these theories with actual results." As the family group moved toward the main residence, Marcus found himself walking beside one of Lyra's brothers, who introduced himself as Jorik Velter. "You know," Jorik said conversationally, "most humans in this system are slaves or servants. What makes you different?" "Training, opportunity, and motivation," Marcus replied. "Same things that make anyone different." "Training in what?" "Problem-solving under pressure, adapting to unexpected situations, working with limited resources to achieve objectives that seem impossible." Jorik laughed, but not unkindly. "You sound like a soldier." "I was Earth Defense Force Special Operations." "And now you're a merchant's husband." Marcus looked at him seriously. "Now I'm someone with the chance to prove that humans deserve better than slavery and contempt." The main residence was a masterpiece of Zephyrian architecture, with rooms that flowed into each other through graceful curves and archways. Holographic displays showed real-time information about trade routes, market conditions, and political developments throughout the empire. This was clearly the working heart of a major commercial operation. During dinner, Marcus found himself subjected to subtle but persistent questioning from Lyra's family members. They wanted to know about his background, his capabilities, his plans, and his understanding of Zephyrian culture. He answered honestly when possible and diplomatically when necessary, always keeping in mind that he was being evaluated for worthiness to join their family. The real test came after the meal, when Trade Lord Kelvin led Marcus to his private study. The room was lined with artifacts from dozens of different worlds, evidence of the family's extensive trading networks. "Tell me," the Trade Lord said, pouring 2 glasses of an expensive-looking liquor, "what do you really hope to gain from this marriage?" Marcus accepted the glass but didn't drink. The chance to prove that humans can be valuable partners instead of just resources to be exploited. "And if you succeed in the trials, if you gain access to our commercial networks and political connections, what then?" "Then I use those resources to create opportunities for other humans, trading partnerships that showcase human capabilities, employment that allows humans to demonstrate their real potential, maybe even negotiations to end the slave trade entirely." Trade Lord Kelvin's eyebrows rose slightly. Ambitious goals for someone who was unknown in our society a week ago. "Ambitious goals require ambitious approaches," Marcus replied. "Your daughter understands that, I think you do too." "Why do you think that?" "Because you built this commercial empire by taking calculated risks on opportunities that others missed. You succeeded by seeing potential where competitors saw only problems. What I'm proposing is just an extension of the same approach." The Trade Lord sipped his drink thoughtfully. "The succession trials are not merely business exercises, Marcus. They test everything that makes a worthy heir: intelligence, leadership, adaptability, and the ability to make difficult decisions under pressure." "I understand that." "Do you? Some of the challenges may require you to choose between human interests and Zephyrian interests. Some may put you in direct competition with other species you might sympathize with. Are you prepared for that?" Marcus met his gaze steadily. "I'm prepared to prove that humans can think beyond narrow self-interest when it serves larger goals. That's what makes us good partners, not just useful tools." Trade Lord Kelvin was quiet for a long moment, studying Marcus with an intensity that was almost uncomfortable. Finally, he smiled slightly. "My daughter has chosen, interestingly," he said. "I hope for both your sakes that her judgment proves correct." Later that evening, Marcus found himself alone on a balcony overlooking the estate's gardens. The twin moons of Velcaris painted everything in silver light, creating an alien landscape that was both beautiful and strange. "Having second thoughts?" Lyra asked, joining him at the railing. "About the marriage, no, about the trials, definitely." "Why?" Marcus gestured toward the sprawling city below them. "Look at this place. Look at what your people have built. I'm one human from a species most aliens consider barely above animals. Tomorrow I'm going to compete against the best and brightest of one of the galaxy's most powerful civilizations. And I have no idea if I'm actually capable of winning, or if I'm just fooling myself into thinking I can make a difference." Lyra was quiet for a moment. "Do you know what convinced me that humans were extraordinary?" "The dock worker you mentioned." "Before that, I was reviewing slave market records, trying to understand why humans consistently commanded higher prices than other species despite being considered primitive. The data showed something interesting." She activated a small holographic display that showed statistical information. "Humans adapt to new situations faster than any other species. You solve problems that stump others. You continue functioning under stress levels that cause other species to shut down mentally. Maybe we're just too stupid to know when to give up. Or maybe you're smart enough to find solutions that others miss because they're too focused on conventional approaches." Marcus looked at the data, seeing patterns that he recognized from his military training. "What aren't you telling me about these trials?" "What do you mean?" "Your research is too good, your preparation is too thorough, and your family isn't nearly as surprised by this marriage as they should be. What's really going on?" Lyra smiled, and Marcus saw that predatory expression again. "The trials are traditionally won by heirs who can demonstrate innovative thinking and unconventional problem-solving. For the last 50 years, they've been dominated by the same families using the same approaches. And the Empire needs new ideas, new energy, new ways of thinking about old problems. My father has been saying that for years, but he's never had a way to prove it." Marcus understood suddenly. He knows about us, about what we're planning. He knows that I've been researching human capabilities for months. He knows that I believe cooperation with humans could benefit our people. And he knows that if we succeed in the trials, we'll be in a position to test those theories on a scale that could change everything. So this isn't just about your inheritance. It's about proving a point to your entire civilization. It's about proving that the future belongs to those who can work with other species as partners, not just rule over them as masters. Marcus leaned against the railing, processing this revelation. The stakes were even higher than he had realized, but that also meant the potential rewards were greater. "No pressure," he said dryly. "None at all," Lyra agreed, then laughed. "Just the chance to reshape interspecies relations throughout this part of the galaxy." Marcus looked out at the alien city below and felt that familiar stirring of excitement that came before a particularly dangerous mission. Tomorrow, he would find out if one human could really make a difference on a galactic scale. "Well," he said finally, "at least it won't be boring." The Succession Trial Arena was a massive circular structure in the heart of Velcaris, designed to accommodate thousands of spectators and broadcast the proceedings throughout the Zephyrian Empire. As Marcus and Lyra entered the competitors' preparation area, he could feel the weight of countless eyes upon him. "Remember," Lyra said quietly, "the first trial is always designed to test basic competency. It looks simple, but it's usually more complex than it appears." They joined 11 other pairs of competitors, all young Zephyrian heirs with their chosen partners. Marcus was the only non-Zephyrian in the group, and the stares and whispered comments made that abundantly clear. Some looked curious, others contemptuous, but all seemed convinced that his presence was some kind of elaborate joke. Trial Master Zevek, an elderly Zephyrian with ceremonial robes and an air of absolute authority, stepped onto the central platform. His voice boomed through the arena's amplification system as he addressed both the competitors and the massive audience. "The first trial will test your ability to solve complex logistical problems under time pressure," he announced. "Each team will be given identical resources and identical objectives. You will have 2 hours to demonstrate your approach." Holographic displays activated throughout the arena, showing what looked like a 3-dimensional star map. A trade route connecting 5 different star systems was highlighted, with various symbols indicating planets, space stations, and shipping lanes. "The scenario," Trial Master Zevek continued, "is a critical supply shortage affecting the Kepler mining colonies. Food, medical supplies, and equipment must be delivered within 6 standard days, or the colonies will be forced to evacuate. However, the normal shipping routes have been disrupted by solar storm activity and pirate raids." Marcus studied the display, his military mind automatically analyzing the tactical situation. The problem was more complex than it appeared at first glance. The storms would force longer routes, but the pirate activity meant that larger, more valuable shipments would be targeted. "Your resources include a fleet of cargo vessels, escort ships, and priority access to emergency supplies from multiple sources. Your objective is to deliver maximum supplies to maximum colonies while minimizing losses and maintaining profitable operations." As the holographic interfaces activated for each team, Marcus noticed something interesting. The other competitors were already discussing traditional shipping approaches: consolidated cargo, heavy escorts, established trade routes. They were thinking like merchants, which made sense for a commercial empire. "They're all making the same mistake," Marcus said quietly to Lyra. "Which is?" "They're treating this like a business problem instead of a military problem." Marcus activated their team's interface and began pulling up detailed information about the available resources. The cargo ships were standardized commercial vessels, built for efficiency rather than speed or defense. The escort ships were lightly armed patrol craft, adequate for deterring casual pirates, but not for protecting high-value targets. "What are you thinking?" Lyra asked, watching him navigate through the data. "I'm thinking that every other team is going to try to solve this by brute force. Big convoys, heavy escorts, direct routes. But that's exactly what the pirates will be expecting." Marcus began sketching out an alternative approach on their tactical display. Instead of large, obvious shipments, he designed a complex network of small, fast deliveries using routes that avoided both the storm activity and the most likely pirate interdiction points. "You want to split our cargo into dozens of smaller shipments?" Lyra asked. "Not just split it, disguise it. Look at this." Marcus highlighted several entries in the resource database. "We have access to civilian passenger vessels, research ships, even some diplomatic courier craft. All of them can carry cargo, but none of them look like traditional freight haulers." Lyra began to understand his approach. "You want to hide our supplies inside ships that pirates wouldn't normally target." "Exactly, and more than that." Marcus pulled up the pirate activity reports. "Look at the pattern of their raids. They're hitting the most valuable shipments on the most direct routes. They're not wasting time with small, scattered targets." Working together, they designed a delivery network that used psychology as much as logistics. Medical supplies went out on clearly marked hospital ships that pirates typically avoided. Food shipments were disguised as scientific equipment aboard research vessels. Critical machinery was broken down into component parts and distributed across multiple courier runs. "But what about the escort ships?" Lyra asked. "How do we use them effectively if our cargo is scattered across dozens of vessels?" Marcus smiled. "We use them as bait." He showed her the final element of his plan. While their real cargo moved through unconventional routes, their escort ships would guard obvious decoy convoys carrying less critical supplies. The pirates would waste time and resources attacking heavily defended targets with minimal value, while the real deliveries slipped through unnoticed. As they worked out the details, Marcus became aware that other teams were watching their progress with increasing confusion. The Zephyrian competitors couldn't understand why anyone would deliberately choose the most complicated possible approach to what seemed like a straightforward problem. "They think we're making this too complex," Lyra observed. "Good, let them think that." With 30 minutes remaining, Marcus and Lyra had finalized their strategy. Their delivery network looked chaotic compared to the clean, linear approaches of other teams, but Marcus was confident it would work. He had used similar principles during military operations, using deception and misdirection to achieve objectives that seemed impossible through conventional means. "Time remaining 5 minutes, Trial Master Zevik announced. Marcus made final adjustments to their plan, optimizing routes and timing to ensure maximum efficiency. As he worked, he noticed that several other teams were still struggling with basic resource allocation problems. They were so focused on traditional approaches that they couldn't adapt to the unusual constraints of this scenario. Time. All teams stopped work immediately. Trial Master Zevik activated a massive holographic display that would run simulations of each team's approach, showing the results in real time for the entire audience to see. The first team's simulation showed a competent but unimaginative approach. Large convoys with heavy escorts followed modified versions of standard trade routes. Their result: 60% of cargo delivered successfully, with several ships lost to pirate raids and storm damage. The second team had tried a more aggressive approach, using their escort ships to actively hunt pirates while cargo vessels used direct routes. Result: 70% delivery, but at enormous cost in both ships and crew. Team after team presented variations of the same basic strategies, with results ranging from 40 to 75% successful deliveries. The audience seemed satisfied with these outcomes, applauding particularly clever tactical decisions. Then it was Marcus and Lyra's turn. The simulation began, showing their scattered network of disguised cargo vessels moving along seemingly random routes. The audience murmured in confusion as hospital ships, research vessels, and diplomatic couriers began converging on the mining colonies from dozens of different directions. Meanwhile, the decoy convoys drew pirate attacks exactly as Marcus had predicted. The raiders focused on the obvious targets with heavy escorts, assuming these must be the most valuable shipments. They wasted time and resources attacking well-defended decoys while the real cargo slipped past unnoticed. As the simulation progressed, the audience's confused murmurs gave way to appreciative comments. The complexity of the plan became clear as each element worked in harmony with the others. Timing was critical, but Marcus had calculated everything precisely. Final result: 97% of cargo delivered successfully, with minimal losses and maximum efficiency. The arena fell silent for a moment, then erupted in surprised applause. The audience had never seen anything like Marcus's approach. It was unlike any strategy that previous competitors had ever attempted. Remarkable, Trial Master Zevek commented, studying the simulation results. Unorthodox but remarkably effective. As they left the arena, Marcus noticed the changed expressions on the faces of other competitors. The contempt and amusement had been replaced by wariness and respect. They were beginning to realize that the human competitor might be more than just an exotic novelty. "How did you know that would work?" Lyra asked as they returned to the family estate. "Because I've been in situations where conventional approaches don't work," Marcus replied. "When you're outgunned and outnumbered, you have to think differently. You have to use your enemy's expectations against them. And that's a human trait. That's a survival trait. Humans have been the underdog in most conflicts throughout our history. We've learned to win by being unpredictable, by using strategies that our enemies don't understand until it's too late." That evening, Trade Lord Kelvin called Marcus to his study again. This time, his expression was thoughtful rather than evaluative. "I watched the trial today," he said without preamble. "Your approach was educational." "Thank you. I've been in commerce for 40 years, Marcus. I've seen every possible variation of shipping strategy, every approach to logistical challenges. But I've never seen anything like what you designed today." Marcus waited for him to continue. "You didn't think like a merchant. You thought like someone who had to solve an impossible problem with inadequate resources. You thought like someone for whom failure meant death rather than just financial loss." "Different motivations create different solutions," Marcus agreed. "Indeed, and that raises interesting questions about how we've been approaching our challenges throughout the Empire." Trade Lord Kelvin activated a holographic display showing economic data for the past several decades. "Our growth has been slowing. Our innovations have become incremental rather than revolutionary. We've become comfortable with conventional approaches. And comfort can be dangerous when circumstances change." "Exactly. Which is why I'm beginning to think that my daughter's choice of husband may be more strategically valuable than I initially realized." Marcus felt a surge of hope but kept his expression neutral. "The trials aren't over yet." "No, they're not. But today proved something important. It proved that different perspectives can produce superior results, even when those perspectives come from species we've traditionally considered inferior." The Trade Lord paused, looking directly at Marcus. "Tomorrow's trial will be more challenging. It will test not just your problem-solving abilities, but your capacity for leadership and decision-making under extreme pressure." "What kind of challenge?" "The kind that reveals whether someone has the strength to make difficult choices for the greater good. The kind that separates those who are truly worthy of power from those who merely want it." Marcus nodded. "We'll be ready." "I hope so. Because if you succeed tomorrow, you'll face a final trial that will test everything you've learned about cooperation, strategy, and the true nature of leadership." As Marcus left the study, he realized that the stakes were rising with each success. Tomorrow would determine not just whether he and Lyra could claim her inheritance, but whether they could prove that humans deserve to be treated as equals rather than subjects throughout the galaxy. The comfortable part of their journey was over. Now came the real test. The final trial took place in a secured government complex, away from public spectators. Only 3 teams had advanced this far, Marcus and Lyra, plus 2 other pairs representing the most prestigious houses in the Empire. The atmosphere was tense with the knowledge that everything would be decided within the next few hours. Trial Master Zevek led them into a situation room equipped with real-time communication links to various parts of the Empire. Multiple holographic displays showed star maps, resource allocations, and what looked like developing crisis situations. "The final trial is not a simulation," he announced gravely. "You will be dealing with actual emergencies affecting real people throughout our territory. Your decisions will have genuine consequences." Marcus felt his pulse quicken. This was familiar territory, real-time crisis management with lives hanging in the balance. "3 situations require immediate attention," the trial master continued. "A mining accident has trapped workers on Kepler 7. A diplomatic crisis threatens to destabilize trade relations with the Andorian Confederacy. And reports are coming in of a potential slave uprising on the agricultural world of Vega Prime." The other teams looked confident as they moved to their assigned workstations. These were exactly the kinds of problems that young Zephyrian nobles trained for their entire lives. Marcus and Lyra took their positions at the third workstation, where information about all three crises was streaming in real time. Each team will take primary responsibility for one crisis, the trial master explained, but all three situations are interconnected. Your success will be judged not just on how well you handle your assigned problem, but on how effectively you coordinate with the other teams to address the larger implications. Marcus scanned the incoming data, immediately recognizing the complexity of what they faced. The mining accident required technical expertise and resource coordination. The diplomatic crisis needed cultural knowledge and negotiation skills. The slave uprising demanded understanding of social dynamics and strategic thinking. "Which situation do you want?" Lyra asked quietly. "Vega Prime," Marcus said without hesitation. "The slave uprising." Lyra looked surprised. "That's the most politically sensitive assignment. If we handle it badly, we could destroy any future relationship with the Empire. If we handle it well, we prove something important about human perspectives on freedom and justice." The other teams had chosen their assignments. House Meridian took the mining accident, while House Kalos claimed the diplomatic crisis. That left Marcus and Lyra with what most Zephyrians would consider the most dangerous problem. As data flowed in about the situation on Vega Prime, Marcus began to understand the scope of the challenge. The agricultural world used slave labor from multiple species to maintain its massive food production operations. Reports indicated that human slaves had initiated a work stoppage that was rapidly spreading to other species. Standard Response Protocol recommends immediate military intervention, Lyra read from the official guidelines. Restore order, identify ringleaders, make examples to prevent future incidents. "That's exactly the wrong approach," Marcus said, studying the reports more carefully. "Look at this data. The uprising started because of a safety incident that killed 17 workers. The slaves aren't rebelling for the sake of rebellion. They're demanding basic safety protections." Marcus activated the communication link to Vega Prime and requested direct contact with the plantation supervisors. Within minutes, he was speaking with a clearly frustrated Zephyrian administrator named Supervisor Korvek. "The situation is completely out of control," Korvek reported. "The slaves have barricaded themselves in the processing facilities and refused to return to work. Food production has stopped completely." "What triggered the initial incident?" Marcus asked. "A structural collapse in processing plant 7. Some workers were killed. The survivors are claiming it was preventable, that we ignored safety reports." "Were the safety reports accurate?" Supervisor Korvek hesitated. "There were concerns about the structural integrity of some older facilities, but replacement costs would have been enormous." Marcus exchanged glances with Lyra. This was exactly what he had suspected, a preventable tragedy caused by prioritizing profits over worker safety. "Supervisor Korvek, I'm going to suggest a different approach than military intervention. Are you willing to consider alternatives?" "At this point, I'm willing to consider anything that gets production back online." Marcus activated the communication link that would allow him to speak directly to the slave workers. This was highly irregular. Slaves were not typically considered worthy of direct negotiation, but the trial master had given them authority to use any approach they deemed necessary. "This is Marcus Chen," he said in Standard Galactic, the common language used throughout the Empire. "I'm speaking for the Imperial Trade Council. I'd like to hear your concerns directly." The response was immediate and emotional. Multiple voices spoke over each other, describing years of dangerous working conditions, inadequate safety equipment, and supervisors who treated their lives as expendable. The collapse of Processing Plant 7 was just the latest in a series of preventable incidents. "We're not asking for freedom," said one voice that seemed to speak for the group. "We know that's not possible. We're just asking to be treated like living beings instead of disposable equipment." Marcus muted the communication temporarily and turned to Lyra. "What authority do we have to negotiate changes in working conditions?" "Technically, we can authorize any measures necessary to restore productivity," Lyra replied. "But implementing permanent changes would require ongoing support from whatever house claims jurisdiction over Vega Prime." "And which house is that?" Lyra checked the administrative records. House Meridian, the same house that's handling the mining accident. Marcus immediately understood the connection. Both crises involved worker safety and resource allocation. The mining accident on Kepler-7 and the uprising on Vega Prime were symptoms of the same underlying problem, prioritizing short-term profits over long-term sustainability. He activated the inter-team communication link. House Meridian, this is Team Velter. We need to coordinate our responses. Both of our situations involve worker safety issues. The response came from Joran Meridian, heir to one of the Empire's most powerful mining operations. Our situations are completely different. We're dealing with a technical rescue operation, not a slave rebellion. Are you what caused the mining accident? There was a pause. Equipment failure due to deferred maintenance schedules. Exactly. You're dealing with the aftermath of safety compromises, and we're dealing with workers who refuse to accept those compromises anymore. If we solve these problems separately, we're missing the larger issue. Marcus proposed a coordinated response that addressed both situations simultaneously. House Meridian would implement comprehensive safety upgrades on Kepler-7, while publicly committing to empire-wide safety standards for all their operations. In return, Marcus and Lyra would negotiate a resolution on Vega Prime that included immediate safety improvements and a framework for ongoing worker protections. You want us to spend millions of credits on safety upgrades across our entire operation? Joran asked. I want you to invest millions of credits in productivity improvements that happen to make workers safer, Marcus replied. Safe workers are more efficient. Healthy workers produce better results. Equipment that's properly maintained doesn't fail at critical moments. Lyra was already pulling up economic data to support Marcus's argument. Long-term analysis shows that safety investments pay for themselves through increased productivity and reduced accident costs. But the initial capital expenditure gets offset by insurance reductions, improved worker morale, and decreased turnover, Marcus interrupted. Plus, if House Meridian becomes known for having the safest operations in the Empire, you can attract better workers and charge premium prices for your reliability. As they worked through the details, Marcus realized that the diplomatic crisis team was listening to their coordination efforts with increasing interest. The Andorian Confederacy's trade dispute centered around allegations that the Zephyrian Empire used unfair labor practices that gave them competitive advantages in agricultural markets. If we can demonstrate that we're implementing fair labor standards throughout our territory, the House Kalos representative said slowly, it removes the Confederacy's primary objection to our trade practices. Exactly, Marcus agreed. All three crises have the same root cause, policies that prioritize short-term gains over sustainable long-term growth. Fix the underlying problem and all three situations resolve themselves. Over the next 2 hours, the three teams worked together to implement a coordinated solution that none of them could have achieved independently. House Meridian invested in safety upgrades while positioning themselves as industry leaders in worker protection. House Kalos negotiated a new trade agreement with the Confederacy based on improved labor standards. And Marcus negotiated a resolution on Vega Prime that gave workers meaningful safety protections while maintaining productivity. The key insight was recognizing that treating workers as valuable assets rather than disposable resources actually increased profitability in the long run. It was a perspective that came naturally to Marcus's human understanding of dignity and cooperation, but it required economic analysis to convince Zephyrian decision-makers. When the trial ended, Trial Master Zevek looked genuinely impressed. In 40 years of administering these trials, I have never seen three teams coordinate so effectively or achieve such comprehensive solutions to complex problems. The formal announcement came an hour later, in front of the assembled nobles and trade representatives who would judge the results. All three teams had technically succeeded in their individual assignments, but Marcus and Lyra were declared the overall winners for their leadership in developing the coordinated approach. Team Velter demonstrated the kind of innovative thinking and collaborative leadership that our empire needs as we face an increasingly complex galactic environment, the trial master announced. They will inherit full trading rights and a seat on the Imperial Trade Council. As applause filled the chamber, Marcus felt a sense of accomplishment that went beyond personal victory. They had proven that human perspectives could contribute to Zephyrian success, that cooperation between species could produce better results than domination. But more importantly, they had established a framework for changing how the Empire treated human workers throughout their territory. The safety standards and worker protection protocols they had negotiated would affect thousands of human lives across dozens of worlds. Later that evening, as they celebrated with Lyra's family, Trade Lord Kelvin pulled Marcus aside for a private conversation. "You realize what you've accomplished today?" he asked. "We won the trials and earned our inheritance," Marcus replied. "You've done much more than that. You've proven that humans can be valuable partners in governing and commerce. You've established precedents that will change how human workers are treated throughout the Empire. And you've demonstrated approaches to problem-solving that could revolutionize how we handle crisis management." Trade Lord Kelvin paused, looking thoughtful. "But most importantly, you've shown my people that cooperation with humans isn't just morally right, it's strategically advantageous." Marcus nodded, understanding the full implications. "This is just the beginning." "Indeed, tomorrow you'll take your seat on the Trade Council, and the real work begins. You'll have the resources and authority to implement changes on a scale that could transform interspecies relations throughout this part of the galaxy." As Marcus looked out at the celebration around him, he thought about all the humans still trapped in slavery, still treated as property throughout the Empire. Today's victory was meaningful, but it was only the first step toward the larger goal of establishing human dignity and freedom as galactic principles. "Ready for the next challenge?" Lyra asked, joining him at the window. Marcus smiled, feeling more confident and hopeful than he had since his capture 3 years ago. "Let's change the galaxy." And as the twin moons of Velcaris rose over the capital city, Marcus Chen, former slave, former soldier, and now the first human member of the Imperial Trade Council, began planning how to turn one small victory into a revolution that would echo across the stars.